Alrighty, welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining us live on this beautiful Wednesday night. Just a quick reminder, if anybody does want to join us, you could email me at rabbizitron@torahanytime.com. Also, the links usually are in the link to join the Zoom, the link to join the WhatsApp group, that is, to be able to join the Zoom, is on the notes usually in the classes. Hopefully Torah Time is working at the back end, but right now it's on the YouTube one. But on Torah Time as well in the coming updates. Okay, so tonight we are learning Leilu Nishmat Fega Bat Yehuda Halevi, as well as Leilu Nishmat Rabbi Avram ben Reb Chaim Yehuda and Yecheskel ben Rabbi Avram. Also, a quick reminder for all those that didn't sign up to me'emasai.org. That's the Mishnayos program. And this is where you could tell people that capitalize on opportunities and I thank everybody who did join and who did donate to this organization. I definitely I see all from the back end. So I thank everybody for joining. Not only yes, we're also learning the Refuah Shlema to Rab Pesach Akron, which thank you for mentioning that. Which I'm trying to remember the name right now. If anybody could post it on the instead of me, well, we'll do that. Thank you. Also, we're learning the Refuah Shlema to Rab Pesach Yosef ben Hinda, as well as Refuah Shlema to Avram Yaakov ben Yael and Chava bas Chaya Esther. Okay. So tonight, so regarding the Amos side, so anybody who joined up already, greatly appreciated. Huge chesed coming your way. Whoever didn't join, utilize this opportunity to capitalize on opportunities that are presented to you. Every so often in our life, we get an opportunity to do something, meaning that some days can seem uneventful, can seem like you're just going through the day, and every once in a while you have an opportunity that Hashem just sends your way. And some people go for it and they capitalize on it, and they take that opportunity. These are known as usually successful people, because these are people that try to live life to the fullest, and that they have an opportunity, they take it. If there's no opportunity, some of them search for an opportunity. But here I'm presenting you an opportunity, a very simple opportunity, and that is you go to me'emasai.org, MEIMASAI.org, and you're able to sign up to learn a Mishnah a day. And one Mishnah a day, it's going to come to you. We're working on an update that it's going to be English also in the emails only. You'll go to the website, you'll see what I'm talking about, and you'll have an opportunity to literally learn one Mishnah a day. It'll take you 30 seconds, and it'll be a huge schus, not only for yourself, but for couples that are struggling with infertility. No one should ever know about it, as well as funding for an organization, an amazing organization, A-Time, which I've been involved with for quite a few years. It's a significant schus, and one should capitalize when you do have the opportunity. Okay, now let's move on to the topic at hand. So going to go a little bit on current events, and then we're going to transition into the way that we usually do and take in lessons that we learn from it. So every so often, and this is probably why every so often I speak about current events. Maybe I should do it more often, maybe I should do it less often, I don't know. But there is a lot of lessons to learn in the way the news is going. It's like you could either be like, oh my gosh, this world is crazy, which you're not wrong, or you could be like, there is so many lessons that we can take away from this. And I feel people tend to forget about those lessons or tend to overlook those lessons. And there's really a lot to go and to uncover. Just to give you a little bit of an example. And again, this is just a one or two examples, but you really can look at this throughout the whole spectrum of what's going on in the world. So there was recently there was a man that was assassinated, murdered. He was a CEO of a United Healthcare company. His name was Brian Thompson, father of two, I believe it was. He has a wife, he's the CEO of a very large corporation, large business, healthcare business. And this guy is, a businessman, not a terrorist, not a murderer, as much as the left liberal media wants you to portray him to be. He's dealing in a business. And again, I'm not answering for the way that they run their business. It happens to be, if anybody knows the healthcare business, it is a very tricky business. There's a lot of nuances. There's a lot of regulations. The profit margins are very small, but, obviously they do produce a lot of profit, but the margins are actually really small. And people, are not so happy with the healthcare system. Obamacare was supposed to fix it. Obviously, it didn't come close to that, just messed it up a little, not a little bit, a lot more. But at the end of the day, this was a businessman who was assassinated. There's no other way to explain it. The response to such a thing, again, I clarified, not a terrorist, not a murderer, not one of these terrible people. Assassination, the response should be very, devastation. And then you see the media comes out, at least some of the left liberal media comes out, showing that this murderer, this assassin, is a hero, and there are people that are calling this murderer, this assassin, like a Robin Hood, style personality. There are journalists that come out and they said that they felt joy at the murder, not empathy. That is a very, very bad statement to say when someone gets murdered. There's others, who went a little bit less. They were like, it's not glee, but I'm not unhappy that this person was murdered. Like, this is mind-boggling. And how are these people allowed to have a platform? How are these people allowed to express their opinion? Now, you have to realize why, and I speak a lot about the media because it has such a tremendous influence on people. The more that you, and this is why I speak about it a lot, the more that you're aware about it, it's not going to, you're able to process the information a little bit differently, which is why I very strongly feel it's important to speak about. Because the way the media works is it shoots out for you information, and generally the way that it's supposed to be is journalists are supposed to give you the unbiased, this is the information, do with it as you please. But lately what has been going on is people have been giving their own personal, opinions and matters on it, and these are not the greatest people that are presenting these opinions. And what's happening is that you have these media personalities that, or legacy media in general, or just like the news stations in itself, that they're giving you the information and they're catering it to fit a certain box and to put it in a certain way to make you think in a certain way, which is a very big problem, especially when you're thinking against the Torah, when you're thinking against the way that you are supposed to think. So the left liberal media, they even go out and they compare this assassin to somebody by the name of Daniel Perry, which I'm sure anybody who's involved in the news, reads the news, knows that Daniel Perry was a Marine who was in a train station, and there was a homeless, not healthy person by the name of Jordan Neely that came in screaming in this train that he has nothing to eat, nothing to drink, and a direct quote is, "I don't mind going to jail and getting life in prison. I'm ready to die." Now, when someone says some things like that, especially if anybody has ever rode a subway, especially New York subway, you tend to listen and be like, okay, let me switch cars, or let me, it's like a situation. It's a dangerous situation. So this guy got up. And the story goes that he put him in a chokehold, and this homeless person passed away. This homeless person, just so that people know a little bit of the background, had 42 previous arrests, meaning that this guy wasn't the kosherest of the dudes out there. And people now classify the same category. So you have somebody that went out to assassinate a healthcare CEO, and then you have somebody else, which you could even break it off into like an offense or in a defense, there's somebody else who went and saw a situation, assessed the situation, wanted to protect himself and people on the train, and resulted, unfortunately, in a tragic, end result where this person passed away. This is not in the same category. This is not even in the same. It won't be in the olden days. If it would have been in the news tab, it wouldn't even be on the same page. It doesn't belong near each other. It has no shaykhs. It's like if someone's started telling you about their favorite restaurants, and then you just tell them, "I like the purple color." Okay, like what does one thing have to? It's like literally like two separate things, but yet they're comparing the two. And this, when you look at it, you're like, this is like so backwards. Like how are people coming with this information, presenting this information? Like this world is a backwards world. It's like, when you look at one of the most important things, especially the left, the liberal, freedom of speech, very important. Freedom of speech is very, very important, extremely important, unless it's hate speech. Hate speech, you cannot say what you want. You do not have freedom of speech if it's hate speech. Because hate speech, that's the worst. Unless it's against Jews. Because then it depends on the context. And if everybody knows what was going on in the past year, knows what I'm talking about. So, like, you think about it, be like, this doesn't make sense. In the past year, you can see how clearly the ethics, the morals of the United States, of the media, of the secular world is so twisted. It's so backwards, where you have people denying, let's say, for example, October 7th happened. They have people that are siding with terrorists, with murderers, and these are people who their whole life is for equal rights. The whole life is for women's rights. And they side with terrorists that did, if you would say, what is the opposite of equal rights? This is the most extreme polar opposite of what equal, and they are siding with them. Now, to try to imagine you have an alien or somebody from a different, off the radar comes into to America, and you have to like give them the background of like what's going on in America, the politics, and how people think, and the morals and the ethics, and like you start explaining to them this, like, yeah, this is okay, but this is not okay. This is good, but this is not. You're like, you'll sound insane. There's no rhyme or reason to anything about this, and you start thinking, be like, how do these people think? And it's not only a problem, okay, if someone's crazy, if someone has their own mindset, that's fine. And that used to be in the olden days, right? People had their mindset, their craziness, and they kept it to themselves. Every so often it comes out at Hitler, who comes out, and he comes out with his own craziness, and he rallies a whole bunch of people. But here, in our day and age, you have something very different that has ever been. You have these media personalities that are just pushing their agenda, their ideas, the way that they think to the entire world. And most people, they absorb the information. You hear something, okay, you're like, okay, you might argue with it if it's something so drastic, but generally, you're like, when you're hearing something and you're not thinking to defend this, you're like, you just accept it. So what's happening to the secular world is that it's getting so corrupt, and it's so backwards, and everything is so crazy that if we don't wake up and just like, even though we're in our own society and we have our own news networks, everybody is to some extent involved in the, in the world, and this comes out, you have to know, you have to be able to defend yourself, at least in your mind, be like, this person is wrong. This person is crazy. This person is speaking of things that are insane, that makes absolutely no sense. The point that I want to bring is like, you have all this craziness, and how do we begin to understand that? Like, why are these people saying something like this? Why are they contradicting themselves? Like, this is okay, this is not okay, the same thing is okay in a different sentence. Like it's like, you can't even begin to explain it. It doesn't make sense. You can't, like, if you would try to analyze like the way that a person thinks, the second that you figure out the way that they think, they throw something out of left field that makes absolutely no sense. So how are we going to explain this? So there was once a young couple that they got married, and this is in the olden days. They go and they decide they're going to go on a honeymoon. And they take their donkey, their trusted donkey, and they go traveling to their, to their destination. And the man just got married. He wants to be a good husband. He wants to do what's right. He goes over to his wife. He says, "My dear wife, my princess, my bride, my queen, please, you ride the donkey. I'm going to walk on the side. You have to be treated like the queen that you are. You are the, the most majestic man. You perfect me. You ride, I walk." He's sitting there, and she's sitting on the donkey. And he's walking next to her. And this is how they're traveling. A short while goes by. There's a man that's traveling also, sees them, pulls over the guy and says, "Can I talk to you for a moment?" He says, "You just got married, right?" He's like, "Yeah, I see the, the cans on the back of the donkey, the just married sign." And he says, "Why is your wife riding the, the donkey and you're walking? Don't you know? Like, when you get married, you have to show who's boss. You have to put your foot down. You're the man of the house. You're sitting over there. You're walking like a little slave, and she's sitting over there. You got to show. You want to be able to run a household. You got to make sure you know who's boss." So he's like, "Oh my gosh, I never thought about that." He walks up to the donkey. His wife is sitting over there. Is everything okay? He goes, my wife. He says, I'm the man. I'm the boss. I'm the one who's going. I'm the boss. I'm the man. He says, you have to walk. I am the one that sits. I am the one that sits over there. The wife is looking at him. He's like, what's got into this guy? But she newly married. She's like, okay, I'm not going to say anything. She gets off the donkey, lets him ride. So they're traveling a little bit further. He's sitting on the donkey. She's walking on the side. A guy looks at them and calls this guy over. He says, can I talk to you for a second? He says, you just got married, right? He says, yeah. He says, what are you doing? He says, you're letting your wife walk while you're sitting on the donkey. Don't you know the famous saying, happy wife, happy life? You got to make sure she's happy. You put her on the donkey, you walk. And the guy says, oh yeah, I guess you're right. He goes back to his wife and says, my darling, my wife, my precious, my everything. He says, you have to do me a favor. He says, I don't know what got into me before. You got to ride the thing. I want to make sure that you're happy. I want to make sure you're taken care of. He says, please, ride the donkey. So she's like, okay. She gets on the donkey and he starts walking. They're walking for a short while. All of a sudden, they see a little hippie, standing over there on the side by the trees, and he's looking at this scene. And he calls over the guy and he says, "What's going on?" He says, "I see you guys just got married." He says, "Yeah, what's the problem?" And he says, "Don't you know?" He says, you don't care about animals. You don't care about the environment. You don't care about the safety. This is how you're gonna start a family. This is how you have to know. You have to love and respect everyone. You're sitting over here. You're riding the donkey. It's not your car. This is a donkey. It's a live being thing. You can't just ride it. And the guy's like, to be honest, I never thought about it. He's a guy, he wants to do what's right. Says, what am I supposed to do? He's like, this is a donkey. We treat it with respect. He says, why is it carrying you? You should carry it. So he goes over to his wife, and says, my dear wife, we have to respect this donkey. While we're sitting here, we're riding on it. Get off the donkey. They get off the donkey. This guy picks it up, the donkey, puts it on his shoulders, and he starts walking. And his wife is looking at it. She doesn't hear these conversations. She's like, what's going on with this guy? They walk a little bit further. Another guy pulls him over. And he looks at the scene and he's like, what are you mentally disabled? Like, what's going on over here? So you have a donkey. You have your bride over here, your wife. And you're sitting over here. You're supposed to ride the donkey. The purpose of the donkey is that you should ride on it. Why are you that both of you should ride on it? So he goes and he says, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's right. He goes to his wife and he says, no, now we're both riding it. They both get on it. They walk a little bit further. Now they see there's two people riding it. One guy runs over to them and says, what are you doing to this donkey? You're killing this donkey. You're hurting this donkey. Two people riding on one donkey? Come on, that's not fair. One person should ride it, not two people. And this guy is going back and forth. His wife thinks that this guy is bipolar. He's switching here, switching there. She doesn't hear these conversations. And this is what's going on back and forth. This is what's happening to our society. You have people that go and they decide this is what's right. So they're like, oh yeah, this is what we should do, and this is what's moral, and this is what's ethical. Anybody to the right of me, anybody to the left of me are crazy, and this is what's right. You go a little bit further in life, further in the story or whatever, in the news, and all of a sudden that's wrong, and now this is right. And people are flip-flopping back and forth and back and forth. And it's like a weird maze you have to navigate to saying what's moral, what's ethical in this day and age. And that is the problem when people base their morals, their ethics based on their person, based on their moods, based on their desire, based on how they're feeling. This doesn't make me feel good, so it's bad. This makes me feel good, so it's good. Like, people decide things just based, especially secular. You don't believe in God, you don't believe in Torah. So what's your foundation of deciding what's right and what's wrong? It's just going to be based off what you think, as opposed to people that go and they follow the Torah. They follow the Torah, they say, listen, this is right and this is wrong. It's irrelevant what I care. It's irrelevant what I feel. It's irrelevant how I think and how I want to present myself. If something is right, you do it. If something is wrong, you don't do it. And you have to know the difference. And it's very simple, and it's very clear, and it always stays the same, and it's never unchanging if you follow the path of the Torah. But if you follow the path of the secular atheistic society that unfortunately that we're living in, then it's all based on feeling and mood and what I feel about. And that's why you have consistently, and now since you have a lot more of the recordings readily available, you see how the hypocrisy of what's going on. You have people that when Trump wanted to pardon, when he was in office the first time, when he wanted to pardon, let's say, his family or something like that, people came out to be like, what are you pardoning? Oh, because you want to pardon your family? Because maybe they did something wrong? Says that's not right. The same people, when Biden wanted to pardon his family, they were like, yeah, why shouldn't he pardon the family? And now what people started doing is meshing these two clips together and be like, look at the hypocrisy. And you want to know why? What's the hypocrisy? Because this reporter liked Biden and this reporter doesn't like Trump. So for this person, this is okay, but for this person, it's the most immoral, disgusting, unethical thing a person can do. And the duality, the direct opposite of what people are thinking about. In their mind, it's completely normal because they don't base anything on spirituality. They're basing it off of their mood and their feelings. Something like that destroys a society. It destroys a person's mindset. And it seeps into unfortunately, to the Jewish mindset, because people hear about it and be like, yeah, you have debates with people. Be like, why? Maybe this, maybe that. No, it's very simple. What the Torah says, that's what you do. What the Torah says that is good is good. What the Torah says is bad is bad. You don't know? Speak to a rabbi. They'll go and they'll tell you exactly what the Torah, what is in that particular situation. So this is the danger of the society that we're living in. It doesn't go based on my feelings. It doesn't go based on how I feel. You have the liberals where you need to be all inclusive. Everybody's got to be inclusive, but not if they're extreme right. Then no, we don't include them. And not of those people either. They don't follow my beliefs and they don't share my values. So you're like at a buffet table. You have this big crown on your head, and you're saying, "I'm all inclusive. I love everybody, but not this, not this. This is icky. This is icky. I don't like this, and this one I'll take. Okay, fine." And you'll take it to go. And this is the problem. So this gives us an introduction to what the Hayashar in the 5th parak says. The Hayashar starts off with a pasuk in Vayikra, chapter 19, verse 18. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamaycha. You have to love your friend like yourself, and the Chachamim tell us that ze klal gadol b'Torah. This is a great. Not even great. It's a fundamental principle of the Torah. This is fundamental, and says the Hayashar, there's no greater display of love than rebuking, giving musar to someone, another Jewish person. And why? Because every soul, says the Hayashar, is connected to one another. When someone does a good deed, it affects the entire Klal Yisrael. When someone does a sin, it affects the entire Klal Yisrael, the entire Jewish nation. We're all connected to one another. So if someone's doing something bad, we have to mention it. We have to say it. Of course, there's guidelines to it. And in fact, one of the guidelines that the Hayashar brings down, and the way that he says that you're supposed to rebuke them, that it's a person needs to understand the effects and the punishments of a soul of a person. It gets a little bit Kabbalistic, actually a lot Kabbalistic. The soul of a person, that what happens after the soul leaves the body. After the soul leaves the body, there are certain things that happen. And if you know that, and you see a person that's doing a sin that can have a very, very detrimental effect on the soul, especially after they leave their body, you have the obligation to go and rebuke them and tell them. And the Hayashar, one of the commentaries on the Hayashar, says it's not enough to tell them that they're doing something wrong. You have to also mention the punishment of it. Why? And the Hayashar says because perhaps after you tell them the punishment, after you tell them what happens to a soul after the soul dies and what that soul has to go through, maybe they will have the yiska, they'll have the merit to abandon their evil path, meaning that people have to have merits to do certain things. And this is something we speak about very often because I feel it's very, very important that the fact that you're sitting over here, you're listening to this class right now, the fact that maybe you're listening to this down the line, whatever, it's on a recording, it's a schus that you have. Not everybody has a schus. People, whatever, they listen to other things, they listen to, the fact that you're able to learn Torah, the fact that you're sitting, that's a merit that you have. To do tshuva, to rebuke, to change your path, that's a merit that you need to have. Again, there's ways to build up on it by doing Torah, but mitzvahs, learning and, working on yourself will give you more opportunities, more, to be able to have these merits, to be able to tap into these things. And by the way, just like an FYI, the people that, let's say, join this simple, or not simple, it's amazing organization, Me'im the Mishnayos movement, this, you have to have a merit to join. The fact that you didn't join, it could be just didn't have enough merits. It's 30 seconds. What does it take in your day? Literally nothing. And it's a huge, huge merit. So if you didn't join until now, there's something, there's got to be a lack of a merit. Because what? It's not time. It's not hard. It's everything's sent to you. Everything is done for you in a very simple manner. And it's going to, B'ezrat Hashem, get a lot easier as we're working on upgrades. So a lot of it has to do with is do you have the schus to join or not? Okay, you're listening to this, you might have, maybe I should join. But if you wait, let's say till tomorrow, you're not going to join. You're not going to end up, it's going to fall apart. It dissipates. So we have to take a little bit of a detour from the Hayashar, and because the Hayashar is going to explain about certain things that happens after a person, the soul, certain souls, and we have to explain the process of what happens once a person passes away from this world. So when a person dies from this world, the first thing that happens to the soul, so there's the body obviously remains in this world. The soul leaves the body, but it starts off just hovering over the body, and it sees everything that's going around it. once the soul has like the perfect vision until it gets buried. Once it gets buried, it becomes less, but they can still see. The soul can still see. And for 7 days for the shiva, they're racing from the shiva house where generally where the person lived and the grave. They're going back and forth, and this goes on over the course of 12 years, and then 12 months, and then the soul moves on to the next world or whatever, and comes down for the year. We're not going to get into all those details. So the soul leaves the body. After the soul leaves the body, there is a process called chibut hakever. Chibut hakever is the process. What's actually not the process. It's not when the soul leaves the body. It's a process of the soul removing itself from the body, or it's getting removed forcefully by the body. It's a painful process. It's a difficult process. We spoke about different classes regarding angels that come and they have to shake it or whatever. Like it's not an enjoyable process, and it's a very, very painful process. There is certain mitzvos that if someone does it makes it a lot less painful. One of them is if someone lives in the land of Israel. Another one is if someone passes away on Friday afternoon, if someone gives charity, if someone listens to rebuke, which is again something that we're going to be speaking about, if someone does acts of chesed, of kindness, they have guests in their home, they pray with kavana, which is also something we're going to be speaking about. The certain mitzvahs that have a skula, that have a certain power that minimize this pain when a soul leaves the body through the chibut hakever. Then, after this process, there is, for some people, unfortunately, there's something called kafakela. Kafakela is a limbo stage. This is the in between this world and in between the next world, meaning that there are certain people that they do they do severe sins, either a lot of sins or very, 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 very significant sins, that they don't even get to go to the next world yet until they go through a certain period of suffering, and it's extremely, extremely painful, this suffering, and it's called, this is the kafakela in between stages between this world and the next world. This is worse than Gehenna, worse than hell. And people can get stuck here for quite some time. And this stage is what the Hayashar is going to be speaking about, which is why I'm giving the introduction on this. And then there's other stages where there's Gehenna, there's reincarnation, and then there is Gan Eden in heaven, which all comes to a full circle by Olam Haba, by Mashiach. But again, that's for a different class. So the Hayashar goes on and says that in the punishment that he's going to describe is where you have in this world there is something called the avira, the atmosphere, and that is if we don't have the ability to be able to see it, but if we would have the ability to see it, we would see there's full of souls. The place is full of human souls that are not allowed to ascend yet to the next world. So he brings down a story from the Arizal, that the Arizal went into the field and he saw that there was a tree that was covered with souls. Again, we're not going to get into the details of the tree. There's certain reincarnations that souls have to get to certain locations until they get a kapara, and then they're able to go into the next world. But he saw particularly in a tree, it was full of souls. So the Arizal asked these souls, "This is what are you doing over here?" So they explained that it says we're banished from up high because not only did they fail to do tshuva, they failed to repent, but they also prevented other people from their friends from repenting, and now they're condemned to wander about the earth. But so what are they doing over there? So they said that they heard, there was a voice that came out and told them that there's a certain righteous man that is able to rectify these banished souls. And that is referring to, obviously, to the Arizal himself. And the Arizal promised that he would do whatever he could in his power to go and help them to try to relinquish them from this world to be able to move on to the next world. And one of the students says the story from the Arizal. And the Arizal explained to the student, he said that how do these souls ascend? Like what is the power that the righteous person has? That's a power of prayer. The prayers of the righteous person, these souls are able to somehow attach themselves to it, and the prayer goes up, and they're able to go up with that prayer. Why specifically tzaddikim? Because righteous people, they pray with kavana, they pray with intention, and that has a power of going straight up. Just to give you a little bit of a detour, the power of tzaddik and the tefillah. Another story from the Arizal, it's not from the Hayashar, it's a different source. That there was a a rabbi that lived in Arizal lived in Tzfas in Israel, and there was a rabbi, the name of Rabbi Yaakov Abulifa, who also lived in Tzfas at that time, and he was extremely humble. He considered himself a simple Jew. He was obviously a lot more than a simple Jew, but he was a very poor man, and he decided that he needed to raise money, so he was going to go travel to Egypt to get donations, and then he'll come back to be able to support his family. So he wanted to go to his Rebbe, which is the Arizal, and get him a letter saying that this is a rightful cause, you're a respectable man, that people should donate to this money. Again, you're coming with a letter from the Arizal, goes a big way for people when you want to get donations. So he decides that he's going to go to the Arizal. As he's walking to the Arizal's house, he sees the Arizal comes out and greets him. He says, "Oh, you're going to Egypt, right?" And he never told him that he's going to Egypt. So he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to Egypt. You want the letter?" And he's like, "Yeah." He never mentioned anything about this. So the Arizal says, "No problem. I want to give you the letter, but you should know that your trip to Egypt is very, very important. You have to go out immediately." So this Rabbi Yaakov says to the Arizal, says, "Rabbi, I'm just going to collect some money. Like, what's so important?" He says, so the Arizal responds to him, "It's not so much your trip in Egypt or to Egypt that's important, but your journey back. That's what's essential." I said, "Okay." He goes, he gets a letter from the Arizal, travels on to Egypt. He goes from house to house, from Beis Medrash to Beis Medrash, collecting money. He raises a sizable amount, and he decides to get ready for his return journey. As he gets, he was planning on getting a camel. He had a friend over there. He says, "No, why you get a camel? Get a horse and wagon and join a caravan, like a group of people, go and travel together." So he said, "Fine, all right, he'll do it that way. It's a much better way of method of traveling." He decides he's going to go that way. So he rents this camel and the horse and wagon, and he starts traveling. Now, he wasn't used to traveling, especially after all this collecting. He wasn't really sleeping well, it's not like he was able to stay in hotels. So he goes and he's traveling, but he's exhausted. And when they're traveling through the desert and it's hot, and they stop for the night, and he goes and they all tie the horse and to the tree so they don't run away. He falls asleep. He wakes up when it's time to go, but he's like exhausted. He's not used to this travel. He travels a little bit with them, and he's like, "I can't." He decides he's going to sit and rest under a tree just for a few moments. And he sits and rests, and before he knows it, he falls asleep. He wakes up 2 hours later, he sees the whole caravan, everyone's gone. He says, "No one's around." And he's like, "What am I going to do?" He's not, he decides he's going to start running. He's like, he doesn't know the direction. There's no GPS. There wasn't Google Maps or ways that he could say how to get back. He was going with a whole group of people. And he decides, he's like, they were going this way. He says, "Let me run this way. Maybe I'll be able to catch up with them." So he goes as fast as he can. He starts running, to try to catch up to this caravan. And all of a sudden, he sees this, in the distance, there was a man. And there was a very interesting thing, though. There was a man that was beating vigorously two bulls. Two bulls were there. It was a man and two bulls, and he was beating these bulls vigorously. And he said he's never seen such cruelty. Like, what's going on? And all of a sudden, as he's coming closer, something very odd happens. The bulls transformed into men, and the man transformed into a bull. And he realized, okay, this is something either his mind is playing tricks on him, he's in a desert, or there's something going on over here. Now, he was, Rabbi, he was a bit, very well-versed man, and he knew that one of the purposes of the deserts is to punish certain souls that they have to go through certain, level of rectification. So he realized that's what's going on over here. But now he didn't know what to do. He was still in the distance. Should he go to them? Should he run away? Should he stay where he is? He didn't know. He wasn't sure what to do. So he decides that he is going to stay where he is and kind of monitor the situation and then see how to get around it. And he sees these cruel whippings that are going back and forth. And all of a sudden the bulls turn back into human, and they start beeline directly towards him. Before he's able to he's in such a shock, they were right by him. They were literally by him, and they ran and they started kissing his feet. And he's like, "What's going on?" And they start telling him, "We know that you're from Tzfas. And you have to help us. You have to please help us. You can't imagine the suffering that we're going through." And they go, these two souls tell him, and he says, "We know that you live near the Arizal in Tzfas. You have to ask him to help us atone for our sins." And he said, and these souls told him, "We're not going to leave until you promise that you won't forget our names and you bring it back to the Arizal." So Rabbi Yaakov said, okay, fine, I promise. After he promised, they told him, it says, close your eyes. He closed his eyes, and he opened a moment later, and somehow he was back in the caravan. He gets back to Tzfas. He goes right to the Arizal. As he gets to the Arizal, the Arizal goes and to him before he even says anything, and he says to them, he says, "You're coming for the souls, right?" He's like, "This coming to discuss what you've seen, the souls and the bulls." And he's like, first of all, he's like, this rabbi has Ruach HaKodesh beyond imaginable. And he's like, yeah. He's like, I don't understand what was going on. He says, so the Arizal explains to him, and he says, each neshama, each soul, each origin of the soul is connected to other souls. Meaning there's a bunch of origins of souls, and each one has a connection to one. That's why you have sometimes, people that they like particular speakers, they like it all depends on the shayrish of their neshama, the origin of their soul, and what they connect to. And also, and not only that, but also for rectification purposes, you're connected to certain souls, and you have the ability to do rectification that other people do not. So the Arizal says, as you, Rabbi Yaakov, you are connected to these neshamas. You're connected to these souls, and you have the power to end their suffering. So again, he says, why me? I'm no one special. How am I going to help? And he says, your neshama is connected to them, and that's why if you do certain things the right way, you can help these neshamas. So Rabbi Yaakov asked him, he says, can you tell me what did they do that they deserved, this punishment? So the Arizal responded, he said they disregarded the mitzvah of payas. There's an obligation for a man to have payas, right? You can't cut your hair in certain areas to a certain length. It has to be up to a certain length. More than that, you can't cut it off. You have to have payas, and that's an obligation from the Torah. These, and there's leniencies, there's different things. These people, they didn't do any of it. They didn't even go to the leniencies. They just, completely did not listen to the to the Torah in this mitzvah. So he said, why did they turn into bulls? Like, what's the connection to the bulls? So the Arizal responded, the mitzvah of payos in the Torah says, Lo sakifu pas reishechem. That's where the Torah tells us you're not allowed to cut, on certain areas in your hair. The Arizal explains, Pas Reishechem, you take the first letters of Pas Reishechem as Pei and Reish, that spells par, that's an ox, and that's what happens when someone goes and messes up on this sin, and this mitzvah, they do a sin and they don't follow this mitzvah, their tikkun, their rectification is they have to come back in forms of bulls and ox, and that's what's going to go and rectify him. And the Arizal goes and explains to this Rabbi Yaakov what he needs to do to atone for these neshamas, and he did it. Rabbi Yaakov did it, and later it says in the story that these neshamas came and they visited this Rabbi Yaakov in a dream, and they told him, and he says, that we finally were merited to go into Gehenna. We're finally merited to go. Until then we've not been allowed to go into Gehenna. And he said after that, in Meretz Hashem we're going to be going also to Gan Eden, but we have to go first through Gehenna. And they went and they thanked this Rabbi Yaakov profusely for the chesed that he did for them. So here we see two things. Number one, how careful we have to be with the mitzvahs. People don't think, okay, well, fine, it always gets me so, I'll go to Gehenna. Okay, what's the big deal? So I'll go a little bit to Gehenna. People do not comprehend, the importance of what our requirements are. So we see over here how careful you have to be with mitzvahs, where people maybe are not so careful with the payas, especially nowadays, the style. You cut yourself a little bit shorter over here, and then it gets a little bit longer over there, up on top, and people have a certain style. They go and they don't realize that what they're giving up and what they're suffering with. That's number one. Number two, we also see over here the power of a righteous person. The power of a righteous person has the ability to go and rectify these unfortunate lost souls. We see another story in the Gemara in Bava Kama regarding the power of a tzaddik. There was a Gemara in Bava Kama at the bottom of page 117a and to 117b, where Rabbi Yochanan was sitting on 7 cushions, and he was giving a lecture. And then Rav Kahana went. I'm giving you the short version of this. So you want to go look at the long version, go look inside. But Rav Yochanan was sitting on 7 cushions, and he was able to now be seen by all his students. Rav Kahana asked the question. Rav Yochanan didn't know how to answer this question, so he went and he took out a cushion from where he was sitting and put it on the side. Sort of, kind of like out of respect for Rav Kahana, like he couldn't answer it, he, lowering himself. And Rav Kahana went and asked another question. Again, he couldn't answer it. He took out another cushion. This went on until Rav Kahana asked 7 questions. Rabbi Yochanan was sitting completely, on the ground. Rabbi Yochanan was an old man, and his eyebrows were drooped over. And he goes over to his students, do me a favor, help me uncover the eyebrows. I want to see who this person is who asked such great questions. So they uncover his eyes, so he was able to look up. And Rav Yochanan saw Rav Kahana, and his lips were like split. And Rav Yochanan thought that Rav Kahana was laughing at him, or smirking at him, smiling at him. And as a result, Rav Yochanan was very offended. He says, why is he, and as a result of that offense, Rav Kahana died as a punishment. The next day, Rabbi Yochanan goes over to the rabbis, the students, and he says, can you believe that this person behaved in such a manner? He was so disrespectful. He was smiling at because I didn't answer it. So they responded to him. He says, no, he wasn't smiling. He says, this is the way that he looked. This is his appearance. His appearance was an unusual appearance, and it looks like he's always smiling, but that has nothing to do with he was completely respectful. So he was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that, he thought that he was offensive. So he went and says, where is he buried? He went to the burial cave, and there was a snake that was sitting in front of this cave. And he tried to get in, the snake didn't let him. So he said, allow the teacher to enter. The snake did not let him go in. So then Rabbi Yochanan says, allow the colleague to enter. The snake didn't let him go in. He said, allow the disciple, the student to enter. And then the snake let him in. Rabbi Yochanan goes into where he was buried. He requested divine mercy. He davened to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he brought back Rav Kahana from the dead. He brought him back, Tchias resurrection of the dead. And Rabbi Yochanan goes to him and he says, had I known that this was your appearance, I would have never been offended and you would have never died. He says, right now you're back to life. Come with me back to the base medrash. So Rav Kahana says, no. I says, listen, I'm not going to come back. I don't want to die to go through this again. He says, if you could promise me, you can request divine mercy from HaKadosh Baruch Hu that I'm not going to have to die again, I'll go with you. But if not, I'm going to stay over here. So whatever, you go look at the rest of the story. But here you see over here that the power of a tzaddik has the ability to raise people from the dead. And we see there's multiple stories in the Gemara where you have these tzaddikim, they literally are able to raise, people died and they're able to bring them back to life. So for sure, if they're able to bring them back to life, they could help them in the next world. They could help them go, whatever that the tribulations, the suffering that they're going to in the next world. The Hayashar goes on and continues. He says, but it's not only a tzaddik that could help these souls, that could fix these souls, but also a poor person. What's a poor person? The Gemara, the pasuk in Tehillim, chapter 102. Verse 1 says, Tefillah la'ani ki yatav v'lafnei Hashem yispach sichai. The translation is a prayer of a poor person when he is enwrapped. This is meaning with affliction, with suffering. He pours out his heart, his thoughts to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Hayashar says that many souls are able to attach themselves to the prayer of a poor person. And there's no prayer more beloved to HaKadosh Baruch Hu than this type of prayer. And a lot of souls are able to also go up and be rectified through this prayer. And the Hayashar says that the side of evil is very, it fears, it's scared of approaching this prayer. The prayer of poor people, the prayer of righteous people. And this is the ability that these souls are able to grab onto it and they're able to ascend to the next world. Now we have to figure out, we have to go a little bit of a sidebar and say what's going on and what's so special about the poor person's prayers. So, there's a famous story with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and that is that Rabbi Shimon, a case came to him that there was a husband and wife, that they didn't have any children for 10 years. And they came to the rabbi and says, we want to get a divorce, we don't have children for 10 years. So the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, just like you are married with a party, you also should go out with a party as well. So they made a feast, they made a party, and the wife made a huge meal, invited a lot of people, and she gave her husband to drink. And the husband was intoxicated, and he goes over to his wife, soon-to-be ex-wife. He says, whatever you want in this house, take, it's yours. He was a man of means. He says, take, it's yours. He says, you are very good to me. Unfortunately, we have to separate under these circumstances, but I want you to take whatever you want. So she says, okay. He goes, and he falls asleep. She goes over to her servant, and he says, do me a favor, take my husband and bring him to my father's house. He takes the husband and brings him to the father's house. The next day, her husband wakes up, and he sees that he's in his father's house, is in his his father-in-law's house, and he's like, what am I doing over here? So she goes over to him and says, you said that I should take whatever I want in your house and I could bring it to my father's house. He says, I don't want the money, I don't want the wealth, I don't want the cars, I don't want the real estate, all I want is you. And says, that's why I brought you into this house. When Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai heard about this, he says, don't get divorced. He prayed and they had a child. Now the famous question gets asked, wait a minute, why, if this is the case, she should have prayed before and they should have had a child beforehand. Why are we waiting until now that he's going to go and to pray and to have a child? So Rav Weinroth explains that what Reb Shimon bar Yochai saw when a couple had to show the desire that they had this desire with all their souls. There was like this is all that they wanted. They wanted to be together. There's nothing else in the world that they want. They have this strong desire. It says now the prayer is going to come into effect. Rav Naftali Trop goes and explains as follows. Explains this beautifully. He said in Slichas we the Ashkenazi Slichas we say L'cha Hashem Atzdaka. And at the end, well, not at the end of that, a few lines down, we say "Kedalim mecharashim dafaknu lasecha," which means is like poor people and like destitute people, we're knocking on your door, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, ask the Rabbi Naftali Trop, what's the difference between a poor person and a destitute person? What's the difference between kedalim uchirashim? What's the difference between a poor and a destitute? So, a poor person is poor. They don't have a lot, but they have something. So if they're knocking on the door and they're asking for donations or food or whatever they're asking, if no one answers, they move on because they still have something. A destitute person has nothing. They don't got anything left. And if that person is not answering, they have nowhere else to turn. That means that they're going to keep on knocking until someone answers. So when someone prays like a destitute person, tells HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I got nothing. I got nowhere else to turn. Einod milvadai. There's only you. There's nobody else that can help me, only you. When you daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when you pray to a God like that, that is where a God answers, and there's the power of that prayer is beyond no bounds. It's the most powerful prayer. And this, when Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai saw that the wife was unable to separate from her husband, realized that this level of prayer is going to break the gates down, and it knows no boundaries, and this is how they were able to succeed in having a child, because they realized that there's nothing else. It's only HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he has. And Rabbi Shimshon Pincus explains this regarding people think, what's kavana? What's when you have intention in prayer? So when you get that prayer, you go and you're going to cry out and you get down with Hashem, which is great and it's important and you should do that. But that's not what kavana means. Kavana means, explains Rabbi Shimshon Pincus, means that you know that there's nothing else other than God. Meaning that there's no other way of you attaining what you want, what you're praying for, only through God, only via God. This is the power of prayer. And here we see the power of prayer has the ability to fix these lost souls, these souls that are roaming throughout the world, which we can't see, because if somebody would be able to see it, the Gemara Bracha says, you could go crazy from it, what's going on in the atmosphere, the avira of the world. But it's there, and we have the opportunity, the abilities to go and help these souls through prayers. Of course, we tend to, sometimes think about, other lost souls. We tend to forget about our own souls. We have to be careful also that, we shouldn't be in danger of, not doing tshuva ourselves and making sure that we're not part of this lost souls, equation. There was a story from Rabbi Binyamin Elbaz brings down the story that, people think that when they're right, they never change because they think that they're right. But just because you're right doesn't mean that you're right. And there are many things, and that's the most difficult thing. When somebody thinks that they're right, they'll never change. A person has to know that, that he's wrong, and many times the person is wrong. So he brings down the story, Rabbi Binyamin Elbaz, that there was an elderly man, 60 years old. He had a dream. And in his dream, he saw all his relatives that passed away came to him, and then he sees his father, which passed away, also comes over to him, and he says, they're summoning you up to heaven. And he says, what do you mean? Why are they summoning up to heaven? He says, you have a story of a situation, a case that happened 43 years ago where someone offended you. They're bringing you up and they're bringing him up for judgment. And he says, but what about me? Why do I have to go up? He says, I was offended. I was hurt. He says, why do I have to do that? And he says, no. He says, you should know the importance of forgiveness. You still didn't forgive. Really, they were going to bring you up when you were 58, but you were they were 2 years ago. But now they waited until you're 60, and now they're going to bring you up for this judgment. This man in his dream is talking to his father. He says, but I'm nervous. He says, if they bring me up, who says I'm going to be able to come back down? And the father responds and says, really, it's better for you to not go up and stay down. But all I could tell you is go to Reb Chaim Kanievsky, and he'll tell you what to do, how to prevent yourself from coming up. So he wakes up moments later, and everything is extremely vivid. every single part of that dream was vivid. It was 4 o'clock in the morning. He remembers everything. And not only that, the story where he was offended, he also remembers very vividly. He goes that morning to Reb Chaim Kanievsky, and when he got there, I guess the family member said, like, he can't see you right now. And he said, I had a dream, and he says his father told him he has to come to Reb Chaim Kanievsky. It's an urgent matter. They told me in my dream that I have to come over here. Please, can I speak to Reb Chaim? So they heard about this. They said, okay, fine. They'll bring you in to Reb Chaim. He goes and he tells Reb Chaim the story. And he goes and he tells him that the story happened 43 years ago when he was a bachar in yeshiva. He was a student in yeshiva, and one day he goes into the base medrash. He says a base medrash of 300 boys learning, big yeshiva, and he's sitting over there and he's learning. And one other boy comes over to him and he tells him, "You have my Gemara. Please give it back to me." And he looks down and he says, it was my Gemara. It wasn't his Gemara. And the boy says, it's mine. And he says, no, it's not mine. He says, I'm not giving it back to you. It's mine. And he gets up, he moves to a different seat, and he continues learning. The boy really felt that it was his Gemara, it was his book. He goes over to one of the rabbis and he tells him, he says, this guy stole my Gemara, doesn't want to bring him back to me. So the rabbi goes and he calls over this boy. And he goes up to the rabbi and he says, what's going on? He says he has to give him back his Gemara. He says, it's not his, it's mine. And he started to explain to him, that it's really his Gemara. Now, before he had a chance to finish the explanation, the rabbi went, gave him a smack across his face that it was so loud, the connection was so loud that everybody stopped learning in the base medrash. 300 boys stopped and they just looked at this boy get smacked and get like knocked out, behind from this rabbi. And everybody knew, the story of the Gemara is stolen, this, that. The boy was so embarrassed. The boy was so hurt. He's like, I'm getting out of here. He says, I'm done with the yeshiva. He gets up and he starts walking out. As he's walking out, he sees the Rosh Yeshiva. He's walking out of the building. He says, Rosh Yeshiva, the one in charge of the yeshiva, says, what's going on? Where are you going? And he explains to him what happened, and he says, I'm out of here. So the Rosh Yeshiva was a very smart man. He talked him down. He says, let me fix it, let me go, and whatever. He went and he fixed the situation. The guy ended up staying in yeshiva. He says that was the story. And then he goes on to tells Reb Chaim, 4 years ago, I decided I came to visit the yeshiva, and I decided I wanted to visit this rabbi. And I went to this rabbi's house because he wasn't in yeshiva, and his wife opened up the door, and he said, I'm here to visit Rabbi so-and-so. And the wife says, now is not a good time. He's not feeling well. And he says, no, I really need to see him. I haven't seen him in a long time. I really need to see him. Going back and forth. No, it's not a good time. I really need to see him. He says, I was akshan. I was stubborn. I really wanted to, to see the rabbi. The rabbi said, fine, you want to come see him? Go see him. He's laying in his bed. And he says, it's a scene I've never seen before. He said he's sitting over there in his bed and his head is shaking from side to side as if someone's smacking him, but no one's smacking him. And no one, and he said, I went over and asked the wife, says, what's going on with the rabbi? And she says, no one knows. He says, the doctors have no idea what's going on. He's moving his head from side to side. No one knows. And he tells Rabbi, he says, really, I know. He says, that's probably, from because he smacked me. And he says, that was 4 years ago. He says, last night I had a dream that they're bringing us both up to Shamayim to have a judgment because of this, of what happened. He says, I don't want to go up over there. What should I do? So Reb Chaim says you have to go and you have to be micheal him, you have to forgive him completely. And Reb Chaim Kanievsky called another 2 people in. They made a bezdin over there. They made a particular. They did a particular hatara for forgiveness. They went through the whole a procedure. And he says now you don't have to worry about it. But the guy said, he says, I still feel a little bit uneasy. He'll ask Reb Chaim, can I go visit this rabbi? And I want to tell him, I forgive him. What the past. It's it's not an issue. I want to clear the air fully. So Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky says, yeah, not a problem. Go ahead. So he goes and travels to this guy's house, knocks on the door, no one answers. Rings the bell, no one answers. The neighbor hears someone knocking and ringing. They open the door, and this man goes and says, "Where's the rabbi?" The neighbor says that this rabbi was rushed to the hospital on Friday. He was very sick and he was rushed to the hospital. He went to this and this hospital. So this man goes into his car, travels to this hospital, asks the nurse where this room is, and he goes to visit this rabbi. As he's getting to the room, he notices a big commotion by the room. All the family, all the friends, everybody's by this rabbi. So he goes over there and he says, "What's going on over here?" So the son happened to be outside, and he says, "This is his father." And his father, the doctors told him that the end is near, and they don't have much time, and they want to say the final goodbyes. And the guy says, "Can you do me a favor, please? I need to speak to him." And he says, "Didn't you just hear what I said? It's like families are saying goodbye. Let him do viday, let him do his confession, let him go. Let him leave. Now's not the time to visit." And he says, no, I need to. He goes back and forth, didn't want to let him until finally he tells him a little bit of the story, told him what happened to Reb Chaim. He says, okay, fine, if that's the case, go speak to his father. He goes in, the father was still, semi-conscious. He looks at him and he says, do you know who I am? And the rabbi, shakes his head, yeah. And he says, I came here because I wanted to tell you. He says, really what happened, the 43 years ago in yeshiva, I wasn't wrong. That was really my Gemara. But I came here to tell you that I forgive you 100%. And I also wanted to ask you for forgiveness in case something came out the wrong way or whatever it was, and that wasn't respectful, even though I was right. I still wanted to ask for forgiveness. And he muttered, I forgive you. He says, okay, fine. He felt confident, he felt comfortable with the resolution. He goes and he tells the son, he says, here's my number if he ever wants to speak to me, whatever, this is it, and he leaves. This is before cell phones. He gets to his house. All of a sudden, his phone rings. He answers the phone. Who is it? The son. He says he figured, his father passed away, probably telling them about the Leviah situation. And the son starts talking and says, you're not going to believe it. The second that you left, his father's condition 180 degrees, changed completely. So the doctors have no idea what's going on. Says the father is sitting up, he's talking, he's looking, everything is normal. I just I don't know what, what ended up happening between you two or whatever, all the details, but I just wanted to let you know that my father completely changes now. He looks like he's going to make a full recovery. And Kachava, really, that's what happened. A few days later, he was back home. And here we see how important it is to let go. People hold on so much of what people offended them and people hurt them. Let it go. Forgive. You could be right, especially if you're right. You should forgive. How many friendships are broken? How many families are torn apart because they did something wrong? Yeah. They did something wrong, but you don't know the effect that it has on your soul. You don't know the effect of what it's going to do down the line. Forgive, let it go. You're not going to go and you're not going to gain anything from it. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to that have this hatred, this burning desire that they just want other people to be punished because they hurt them. What are you gaining from that? You're hurting yourself and you're hurting that other soul. You're not going to gain anything from it. The best thing that you could do for yourself is let it go. It's going to help you spiritually. It's going to help you physically. It's not going to tear you down. Like the famous thing is, if let's say you walk down the street and you see somebody that you really dislike across the street, and it really bothers you, they really offended you, they hurt you, they did something against you, and you get all angry, all upset just by seeing this person, and your whole day is ruined. But this person, he's whistling down the stairs, listening to whatever is a Shir Torah music, whatever it is to listen to. They don't notice the entire thing. So what did you just gain from that interaction, that you had that hatred? You ruined your day. You raised your blood pressure. You raised your stress level. You got in a bad mood. You're depressed and tzabruchen from everything. And the other guy gained, like nothing. He's sitting in there dancing, singing in the rain. There's no issues. So what do you gain from holding a grudge? What do you gain from holding on? Just let it go. It's so important to let go. But over here we see how important it is that we have to be careful for, even if we're right, we have to be so careful. Our neshamas, we're not here, our physical bodies are not here forever. After a certain point in time, we're going to go into the next world. We have to be careful. We have to protect our souls. We have to protect it. We don't want to go through suffering. We don't want to go through difficulties. We want to have some easy sailing. We want to have the positivity of things. And people mess up on simple things that doesn't make any sense. Let it go. Don't worry about it. These are things that people think, oh, you know what? I'm right, so why should I let it go? I'm right, why should I forgive? And especially when you're right, and that's the big lesson that we take away from here, that so many times we're sitting and we're thinking that we're okay, we're thinking we're good, and we'll never change. You think you're that good husband, you think you're that good wife, and it could be you are, but the possibility that, wait a minute, maybe you're doing something wrong, but if you think you're so good, if you think you're so great, if you think you're God's gift to humanity, then you're not going to improve yourself. You're not going to improve your relationship with your spouse. You're not going to improve your relationship with your kids. You're not going to improve yourself because you think you're great. We have to realize we have room for improvements. And if we think we don't have room for improvement, that's when we have the biggest room for improvement. Here, the Hayashar goes on. I know we're going over. I apologize. Okay, maybe I won't be able to get to the end of the parak, but let's go a little bit more. I'm gonna try to finish this this parak. The Hayashar goes on and says, that this same principle of these souls helping the righteous souls, helping these desperate souls that are in need of help, it also works in the next. After the tzaddikim pass, after they pass away, they go through Gehenna. It's part of the process. They have to go through Gehenna. Again, they don't get punished in Gehenna, but they just go through Gehenna. And what happens is a lot of the souls are also able to attach themselves to this tzaddik, to this righteous person, and get out of Gehenna that way. And there's a famous story we mentioned before from Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchev that Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchev was a mohel as well, and his daughter and son-in-law had a baby boy, and he was the mohel. Usually, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak liked to do all the brisim right in the beginning of the day. In the morning, you start off as Zuzim Magdim Lemitzvos. You start off right in the beginning. But they brought them all, the baby to shul. Everybody was in shul waiting for the bris, but the rabbi didn't come out of the room. The rabbi was sitting in the room. Hour goes by, 2 hours go by, a few hours go by. Finally, the rabbi comes out of the room, all smiles, and by this time, most of the minyan already left. There's only a few people there. They had just scraped by a minyan, and they start the bris. They start the whole procedure of the bris. Now, generally, the way that it works is once you get to the point of who's the name of the baby, the mohel goes and leans in, and the father whispers into the mohel's ear the name of the baby, and the mohel says the name of the baby. Over here, I believe Yitzchak did not listen for what his son-in-law was going to name it. He goes and he gets to that part and he says, and he names the baby without speaking to his son-in-law, without speaking to his daughter. He says the baby's name is going to be Yehuda Leib. And they finish the bris, and they had a little suda, and afterwards the son-in-law goes over to his father-in-law, Rabbi Levi. It's like he says, I have two questions. Number one, why did you wait so late? You never wait so late. Everything is always in the beginning. And number two, what's with the name? He says, usually we get to pick the name, but Yehuda Leib, we never even considered that name. We had a different name, in mind. So Rabbi Levi explained to them. He says, when I came to shul this morning, I saw there was a very black spiritual cloud hanging above. And, went through a certain, incantation, whatever. He figured out what was going on, and he said this is what happened. He said there was a very righteous tzaddik, righteous man that passed away. And they were leading him through Gehenna on the special bridge to go to Gan Eden. And this tzaddik went and jumped into Gehenna. And, the angels over there did, this has never happened before. What is a rabbi doing? He's a righteous person. He's not supposed to be in Gehenna. So they had to turn off all the fires. So the angels go and tell the rabbi, you got to get out of here. You're going upstairs. This is not your final destination. And he says, no, I'm not leaving. He says, what do you mean you're not leaving? He says, you can't stay over here. He says, you want me to leave? Fine. I want to take a bunch of, these souls with me. And the angels start laughing and be like, it doesn't work that way. You can't just come here and, take it. And he says, well, I'm not leaving. He says, you go figure it out. They didn't know what to do. So they went up to the next level, right? They went to the kisei kavod, and they said, what are we supposed to do? This rabbi doesn't want to leave. He said he's not going to leave unless he takes souls with him. So the Bezdin goes over there and says, it's very simple. He says, if this rabbi said something, if he's the type of person that always keeps his word, then we have to listen to him, and he has to keep his word. He's going to have to take out souls. If he doesn't keep his word, in this world, then we don't have to listen. We can take him out by force. They look through his life, and they see that he always kept his word. So he said, fine. He says, okay, he gets to take out souls. But now the question is, how many souls can he take out? So they decided the amount of souls that he helped saved in this world, that's the amount of souls that he could take out of Gehenna. They made the calculation. They saw that it was 220 souls. So the angels go back to Gehenna, and they tell him, I say, okay, listen, Rabbi, you're right. He says, you're going to be able to take out souls, and this is the amount that you have. You have 220, go roam around, pick the 220 souls, and bring them out. And the rabbi says, okay, fine. He goes out, and he comes, a short while later, comes out with 440 souls. And the angel's like, what are you doing to us? Rabbi says, 220, what's 440? So the rabbi says, why did I only save 220 souls when I was in this world? Because of the resources I had. But if I had more resources, I would have been able to save more souls. He says, what? Because I didn't have the resources, you're gonna penalize me? And they look into it, and Kachav, it really was true. So they let him take him out all the souls, the 440 souls that he was able to take out. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak said, he says that Gehenna was shut off. I saw this dark cloud. He says, this is the rabbi that just passed away, and he said that his neshama just passed away from this world. He says, isn't this a good name to have? And his name was Yehuda Leib, and that's why they named the baby. And the son-in-law says, you know what, that's a good name. We're definitely sticking with with that name. This is the power of a rabbi. This is what the Kaviyasha says, that the tzaddikim are able to go down to Gehenna, and they're able to save neshamas to get out of Gehenna. Just to finish off, we learn from this that the Kaviyasha tells us that the prayers of the righteous, the prayers of the poor, have a tremendous benefit on the souls that are banished from the next world. And there's no greater act of chesed than saving these souls. And we could say the Kaviyasha brings us down, so we're maybe not in the same league as the righteous of the early generations, and maybe we should just be thankful that our prayers are adequate enough to maybe even just benefit ourselves. But really, we should really strive to go and help those other lost souls, these souls, the neshamas. And in fact, the Kaviyasha brings down a tefillah inside the Kaviyasha in the 5th parak. There's a tefillah that you can say for these lost souls, that to help them. And it's very, very important, the Kaviyasha says, to pray on behalf of these souls, to help them. He brings down a Gemara in Brachos, page 10a, that there was these hooligans that were causing problems in Rabbi Meir's neighborhood, and caused him a great deal of distress and anguish. And Rabbi Meir davened, prayed that Hashem should have mercy on them and they should die. Why is that mercy? Sometimes when someone's heading down a bad path, it's better that they leave this world not doing the amount of sins that they're destined to do. So he prayed for them that they should pass away. Rabbi Meir's wife, Bruya, says, "What are you doing? Why are you praying that they should die?" It says tamu chatoim min haaretz. It says that the sins should be removed from the land. Don't pray that they should die. Pray that they should cease from the sins should be removed, not that they should be removed. And Kachava, he went and he prayed that the sins should be removed and not that they should die. And they really did, and they really repented. And we have a tremendous amount of power. You have people, you have the ability to go. Somebody that's, let's say, off the derech or needs a little bit of it. Pray for that person. Someone that passed away that maybe wasn't on the level. Pray for that person. There's a special prayer. Again, you could look it up in the Kaviyasha. Maybe I should post it on the chat. I don't know. If anybody wants, I could send it to them. It's a prayer that you could pray for these lost souls. The Kaviyasha finishes off. I know that it's late, so we're just going to give a little bit just so we can wrap up the 5th parak. That it's very, very important that when you're praying, that your mouth and your heart, meaning that you're concentrating on what you're saying. You shouldn't be one saying something and not even thinking about it. It's very, very, there's a lot of bad things that happen when somebody goes and they separate their heart from their mouth. And that's not only for prayer, but also the way that people speak. If you the way they used to speak, you shouldn't speak to somebody and think about exactly the opposite of what you're saying. Tell somebody you love them and you really hate them, whatever it is. You shouldn't. In Hebrew, it's called echad b'peh v'echad b'lev. You shouldn't be one in the mouth and one in the heart. You should be consistent in what you're saying. And in fact, the Kaviyasha brings down that somebody that goes and is echad b'peh v'echad b'lev, one in the mouth and one in the heart, this person's descendants usually go and they end up leaving the path of the Torah. So it's something that you should be very, very careful. Make sure that when you pray, when you're speaking, you go and you say what you mean and you mean what you say. There is another thing that the Kaviyasha brings down on this, and that is that there is special protection when people go and when people do mitzvos, that it protects them and it protects their soul. But if somebody is not careful and with the way that they speak and what their real intentions are, this does not have that powerful effect that can protect them. So it has a tremendous effect, and it's very important. Again, it's probably something that we have to speak about once we speak about tefillah. But it's very, very important that everyone knows that when you're davening, you are concentrating what you're davening, you're saying the words that you're davening. When you're speaking to people, you mean what you say. If no, better to be silent. But we see over here many very, very important lessons that we learned today. Number one, how careful we have to be with what the influence that we have from the secular world and the way that people present the information and the way that we look at what's ethical, what's moral, and we have to realize that it's only based on what the Torah says it's ethical and what the Torah says it's moral. Everything else, it doesn't depend on your mood, it doesn't depend on what you care, it doesn't depend on anything else. We also see the importance of the praying for these lost souls, and of course being careful that your soul is not amongst those lost souls. We have to make sure we do the mitzvahs that we are supposed to be doing. We daven the way we're supposed to. Api Kabbalah brachos is extremely important in this manner. there's a lot of aspects that we have to be very, very careful for. And we also have to make sure that we're very, like if we think that we're okay, that's when we know that we have to go and double down and really improve ourselves. And a person always has to know that no matter how good and how much you improved, it's amazing to listen and look at your improvements and realize your growth, but always realize there's more opportunity for growth. And we always have to strive to grow stronger, grow better, and grow closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu help us that may we be part of those that can help these lost souls and not chas v'shalom be part of these lost souls. We'll say a kapitel Tehillim for Klal Yisrael, and then we'll open up for any questions. We'll say kapitel Kuf Lamed, chapter 130, Shir HaMalais, Mima Makim Karasicha Adonai, Adonai Shema B'Koili Tiena Aznecha Kashuv, Voice Lekol Tachanunai, Im Avainas Tish Maria, Adonai Mi Amoid, Ki Im Chas Lecha Leman Tivarei, Ki Visi Adonai Kiv Sanavshi V'Lidvarei Echalti, Nafshi LaAdonai Mishamim LaBaiker, Shaimim LaBaiker, Yachal Yisrael Adonai Ki Madonai Yachesed V'Arbei Moifedus, V'Hu Yiftes Yisrael Mikol Avanesav, Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael, Hanesunim Batzara Vashev Yahaim Dem Bein Bayam Uvein Bayabasha Hamakim Yirachem Aleim V'Yetziim Mitzara L'Rvacha Ma'afela L'Ara Mishiba L'Gula Hashta Bagala Bezman Kariv and Amaramei. Just by the way, another thought, just on the hypocrisy where you look at just another example how easy it is to see this. You have Turkey, with a serious collapse. Turkey went and started taking in a lot of land from Syria. And Israel took a small slither, a tiny bit of land just for the safety. Turkey goes and condemns Israel for taking the land. Like, the hypocrisy is all out there. It's so out in the open. It's so obvious. And once we are able to see it and we see the hypocrisy, then we know that hopefully that gives us a little bit of a protective barrier not to get affected, on it. Okay, we have one question, and then we'll close it off. When I visited one of the cavers in Tzfas, there was a tree nearby with multiple plastic bags tied around its branches. Is there any connection to the Arizal story and the neshama trapped in the trees? That's interesting. I don't know. I've been to Tzfas. I don't recall that tree, but I haven't been in yeah, no, wait, no, I have been. No, I haven't been in like a few years, so I don't recall that. So if it is, I'm not familiar with that. But I'm sure there's an interesting story with Tzfas. There's a lot of interesting stories over there. All right. That looks like it's all the questions. Thank you all for joining. Until next time, may you have an amazing, amazing, amazing week.